crois vraiment que c'est toi qui décides ici? Regarde-moi. Les mains en l'air, c'est bon? T'es satisfait?
Ça suffit, coach. Tu vas calmer le jeu ou on sort d'ici.
Moi, je suis calme. C'est lui qui a débarqué.
They thought he was just the janitor, an old man with a mop who cleaned up their sweat and wiped down their privilege. They laughed. They mocked. They pushed him into that cage like he was nothing, like his dignity was just another thing they could throw around for entertainment. But what happened next in that MMA gym would shatter everything they thought they knew about power, respect, and the dangerous cost of underestimating a black man who'd already survived battles they couldn't imagine. One punch. That's all it took. One devastating blow that would expose not just a broken jaw, but a broken system that lets men like this thrive. What they didn't know about Marcus Webb would change everything.
Marcus Webb arrived at Iron Forge Academy every morning at 5:47 a.m. Not 5:45, not 5:50, exactly 5:47. He'd learned precision from another life, one that most people at the gym knew nothing about. To them, Marcus was just the janitor, the invisible 58-year-old black man who mopped the sweat-stained mats, restocked the towels, and kept the locker rooms spotless while muscular white fighters prepared for glory. The gym sat in the affluent heart of Scottsdale, Arizona, a sprawling 12,000-square-foot facility with state-of-the-art equipment, an octagonal cage that gleamed under industrial lights, and walls plastered with photos of champions. Photos that were notably uniform in their complexion. Marcus didn't complain. He needed this job. After his wife Sharon's cancer treatments drained their savings, after the factory he'd worked at for 23 years shut down, after his daughter's college fund evaporated into medical bills, this was what remained. 60-hour weeks for $13.50 an hour. No benefits, no respect. But Marcus showed up, because that's what you did. That's what his father taught him, and his father before him. You endure. You survive. You keep your head down and your dignity intact, even when the world conspires to strip both away. The gym opened at 6 a.m. sharp, and by then Marcus had already cleaned 3 locker rooms and was working on the main training floor. He moved efficiently, methodically, his movements still carrying the ghost of athleticism that once defined him. Brad Killian arrived at 6:15 a.m. in his lifted black pickup truck with custom rims that cost more than Marcus made in 6 months. Brad was 34, carved from ego and anabolic steroids, with a 12-4 amateur MMA record he talked about like it was a world championship. He ran the morning training sessions at Iron Forge Academy, and he ran them with the casual cruelty of someone who'd never faced real consequences for anything. "Yo, janitor," Brad's voice cut across the gym like a whip crack. "You missed a spot by the cage. Do your job right, old man." Marcus looked. There was no spot. There was never a spot. But he nodded, grabbed his mop, and walked over anyway. Because confrontation cost more than compliance, and Marcus had learned that lesson through 58 years of being black in America. Brad watched him with a smirk, then turned to the handful of early morning fighters gathering for training. "See that, boys? That's what happens when you don't apply yourself. You end up pushing a mop at 60. Laughter rippled through the group. That casual, comfortable laughter of men who'd never had to worry about becoming invisible. Marcus kept mopping, his jaw tight, his eyes focused on the floor. Anywhere but their faces. This was Tuesday. By Friday, things would be very different. The week progressed like every other week. Brad's comments grew sharper. "Hey, janitor, you gonna clean that or just stare at it? Must be nice. No pressure, no expectations, just existing. Probably can't even throw a punch, right, old man?" The other trainers said nothing. The gym owner, a silver-haired businessman named Richard Holloway, who appeared twice a month to check revenue reports, said nothing. The fighters, young men chasing dreams of fame and violence, said nothing. Silence, Marcus had learned, was just another word for permission. On Thursday evening, Marcus stayed late to deep clean the sauna. He didn't hear Brad enter the locker room until the man's voice echoed off the tiles. "You know what I think, Janitor? I think you probably never accomplished a damn thing in your life. I think you're exactly where you belong, cleaning up after real men." Marcus's hands tightened around the mop handle. His knuckles went pale. For just a moment, one dangerous, powerful moment, something flickered behind his eyes. Something old and sharp and forged in places Brad Killian had never been. But Marcus said nothing. He just kept cleaning. Brad laughed and walked away, already bored with his own cruelty. What Brad didn't know, what none of them knew, was that Marcus Webb had been a Golden Gloves champion in 1987, that he'd fought his way out of Detroit's East Side with nothing but his fists and his will, that he'd turned down a professional contract to care for his dying mother, that the precision in his cleaning routine was the same precision that had once made him untouchable in the ring. They saw a janitor. They had no idea they were looking at a weapon. Friday morning would teach them the difference.
Friday, 6:23 a.m. Marcus was replacing the hand wraps in the equipment station when Brad strutted onto the training floor with a particularly large group. 15 fighters, all pumped up for the weekend warrior session Brad had branded Forge Friday. It was the gym's busiest morning slot, when amateur tough guys paid extra to train with real fighters and feel dangerous for an hour. Brad was in his element, loud, performative, a peacock of toxic masculinity, preening before an audience that lived for his validation. "All right, gentlemen." Brad clapped his hands, the sound sharp as a gunshot. "Today we're going hard. I want to see aggression. I want to see killer instinct. I want—" He stopped mid-sentence. His eyes had found Marcus, who was quietly organizing equipment in the corner. A smile spread across Brad's face. Not a friendly smile, a predator's smile. "Actually, boys, I just had a better idea." Marcus felt it before Brad even spoke, that shift in the air that black men learn to recognize, the molecular change that happens when white comfort decides it needs entertainment. "Yo, Janitor!" Brad's voice carried across the entire gym. "Come here for a second." Marcus straightened slowly, every instinct screaming danger. But 15 pairs of eyes were already on him, and he knew the cost of refusal would echo far beyond this moment. He'd lose this job, maybe not today, but soon, and he couldn't afford that. He walked over, mop still in hand, his face carefully neutral. "Yeah, boss." "Boss," Brad repeated the word, savoring it. "I like that. Shows respect. Here's the thing. I'm trying to teach these gentlemen about reading body language, assessing threats, understanding combat dynamics, and I thought, who better to demonstrate on than you?" The room went quiet. That particular silence that precedes cruelty, when everyone knows what's coming, but no one will stop it. "I don't think that's—" Brad cut him off, his smile never wavering. "I'm not asking. It's part of your job duties, helping with training. It's in your contract." It wasn't. They both knew it wasn't. "Just stand here," Brad continued, positioning Marcus like a mannequin. "Everyone notice his posture, weak, defensive. This is what someone looks like when they've never developed warrior spirit, when they've accepted their place at the bottom." Humiliation crawled up Marcus's spine like fire ants. He could feel every eye on him, cataloging his age, his work uniform, his powerlessness. "Now watch," Brad said, circling Marcus slowly. "If I wanted to take this guy down, which would take, what, 3 seconds, I'd exploit his weak base, his slow reflexes, his complete lack of situational awareness." Brad shot out his hand and shoved Marcus's shoulder, not hard enough to knock him down, but hard enough to make him look weak. Laughter rippled through the group, nervous at first, then bolder. Marcus straightened, his jaw clenched so tight he could hear his teeth grinding. "What's wrong, Janitor?" Brad asked, his voice dripping with mock concern. "You look upset. You want to do something about it?" The room held its breath. "No, sir," Marcus said quietly. "I just want to do my job." "Your job," Brad repeated the word, savoring it. "My job is whatever I say it is, and right now I say your job is to help these men learn what a real fight looks like." Marcus's heart was pounding now, adrenaline flooding his system, the body's ancient response to danger, to disrespect, to the kind of humiliation that burrows into your soul and festers. "I don't want any trouble," Marcus said, his voice still level, still controlled, 58 years of controlling it. "Then get in the cage." The words hung in the air like a guillotine blade. "What?" Marcus barely whispered it. "You heard me. Get in the cage." Brad gestured toward the octagon, his expression hardening. "I'm going to give these men a live demonstration of how to handle an opponent with zero training. It'll take 30 seconds, tops. You won't get hurt, much. And hey, you'll have a good story. That time I sparred with an MMA fighter." "Brad, I can't." "You're refusing?" Brad's voice dropped to something dangerous. "I can call Richard right now. Tell him his janitor is insubordinate, refusing direct instructions, disrupting training. You got another job lined up, Marcus?" The use of his name, weaponized, intimate, threatening, made everything worse. Marcus looked around the room, 15 faces staring back, some uncomfortable, some excited, none helpful, none willing to risk their own comfort to stop this. This was the moment every black man fears and recognizes, the moment when the system reveals its true face and you're forced to choose between your dignity and your survival, knowing you'll lose something precious either way. "I'm 58 years old," Marcus said quietly. "I clean this gym. That's all." "Then it should be easy, right?" Brad's smile was back, wider than ever. 30 seconds. Let these boys see what a real fight looks like against someone who can't defend themselves. It's educational." Educational. The word was a slap. This wasn't about education. This was about power, about a white man reminding a black man of his place, about entertainment purchased with someone else's humiliation. Marcus looked at the cage, then at Brad, then at the faces in the crowd. Faces that would forget this tomorrow, while he'd carry the shame forever, regardless of what choice he made. He thought about Sharon at home, her medication bottles lined up on the kitchen counter like soldiers, about the mortgage payment due in 8 days, about his daughter, brilliant and beautiful, working 2 jobs to afford community college. He thought about every time he'd swallowed his pride, bent his neck, survived by surrendering pieces of himself. And he thought about something else, something older, something he'd buried 30 years ago in the name of responsibility and survival. "Okay," Marcus heard himself say, 30 seconds. The crowd erupted, whoops and hollers, and the tribal drumbeat of men excited to watch suffering that wasn't theirs. Brad's grin could have split his face in half. That's what I'm talking about. Now we're going to see something real. Marcus set down his mop, carefully, precisely, the way he did everything. He walked toward the cage, his work boots heavy on the mat, his blue polo shirt already damp with cold sweat. Brad followed, bouncing on his toes like a fighter entering the championship round. "Don't worry, old man. I'll go easy on you. Wouldn't want to actually hurt the help." The cage door clanged shut behind them with the finality of a prison cell. 15 faces pressed against the chain-link fence, already recording, already posting to social media the newest piece of human cruelty disguised as entertainment. Brad moved to the center, assuming his fighting stance, textbook perfect, confident, powerful. Marcus stood across from him, his posture uncertain, his hands at his sides. "Come on, Janitor," someone shouted from outside the cage. "Show us what you got." Laughter, always laughter. Brad started circling, showboating. See his stance? Terrible. See how he's standing flat-footed? That's what we call a target. Marcus's eyes tracked Brad's movement. Something shifted in his gaze, something precise and calculating that none of them noticed because they were too busy laughing, too busy recording, too busy enjoying the show. "All right, old man," Brad said, bouncing closer. "Throw a punch. Let's see what you got. Don't be shy." Marcus remained still. "I said throw a punch," Brad barked, his voice harder now. The entertainment was wearing thin. He needed action. He needed violence. He needed to prove whatever toxic thing he'd been trying to prove since the moment he opened his mouth. He pushed Marcus's shoulder again, harder this time. Marcus stumbled back 2 steps. The crowd roared its approval. Brad moved in closer, his guard dropping, not from lack of skill, but from complete certainty of his dominance. "What's wrong, Janitor? Are you scared? Are you going to cry?" And that's when something changed. Marcus's posture shifted, so subtly that most of the crowd didn't notice. His weight redistributed, his shoulders squared, his eyes focused with laser precision on a spot 3 inches to the left of Brad's chin. His hands came up, not in surrender, in position.
The punch traveled exactly 16 inches. It started from Marcus's shoulder. Perfect rotation, perfect transfer of weight from his back leg through his hips, through his core, exploding outward with 3 decades of compressed power finally finding release. His fist connected with Brad Killian's jaw with a sound like a baseball bat hitting a side of beef. Time fractured. Brad's head snapped sideways so fast the motion blurred. His mouthguard, bright green, custom-fitted, expensive, shot from his mouth in a spray of saliva that caught the overhead lights like diamonds. His legs, muscular and powerful and conditioned through countless hours of training, turned instantly to water. He was unconscious before his knees touched the mat. His body crumpled, not fell, crumpled, like a marionette with severed strings. His head bounced once against the canvas with a sick, hollow thud that made everyone in the room physically recoil. Then silence. Complete, absolute, suffocating silence. 15 men stood frozen, their phones still recording, their mouths open, their brains struggling to process what had just happened because it violated every assumption they'd made, every prejudice they'd wrapped around themselves like armor. The janitor, the old black man, the invisible, powerless, bottom of the hierarchy worker they'd laughed at. He'd just knocked out their trainer with 1 punch. Marcus stood over Brad's unconscious body, his fist still clenched, his chest heaving with breaths that carried 30 years of rage finally given permission to exist. His face was unreadable, not triumphant, not satisfied, not even angry anymore. Just exhausted, the exhaustion of a man who'd spent decades carrying weight that should have broken him. "Someone should probably check if he's breathing," Marcus said quietly. The statement broke the spell. Two men rushed into the cage, kneeling beside Brad's prone form. One of them, a stocky guy with a shaved head and forearms covered in tribal tattoos, looked up at Marcus with something that might have been fear. What the hell was that?" Marcus looked at his hand, flexing the fingers slowly. "Golden Gloves, 1987, Detroit Regional Champion. I had 12 professional offers. Turned them all down when my mama got sick." He said it matter-of-factly, like he was reciting his cleaning schedule. You're a boxer?" Tribal tattoo guy stammered. "Was," Marcus corrected. "Now I'm a janitor, who just did what your trainer forced me to do." Brad groaned, a wet, wounded sound. His eyes fluttered open, unfocused and confused. He tried to sit up and immediately vomited on the mat, his body's response to the concussion now rattling through his brain. Marcus walked to the cage door himself. No one stopped him. No one moved. They just stared, their worldview cracking like ice under too much weight. He picked up his mop, still leaning where he'd left it, and looked back at the crowd. "I'll clean that up," he said, gesturing to Brad's vomit. "It's my job." The statement landed like another punch. One of the younger fighters, a kid maybe 22 years old, with barely controlled acne and rich kid confidence, finally found his voice. Did you just assault someone?" Marcus turned to face him, and something in his eyes made the kid take a step back. "He forced me into that cage. You all watched. You all recorded it. He put his hands on me, twice. He threatened my job if I didn't comply. He humiliated me in front of 15 witnesses, and when he demanded I throw a punch," Marcus paused, letting the words settle. "I threw a punch." The logic was airtight. The recordings would prove it. Every phone in that room had captured Brad's escalation, his threats, his physical contact, his demands. Self-defense, compliance with a direct order, protection against assault, however you framed it, Marcus had just navigated the narrowest possible legal pathway while delivering the most devastating emotional blow. Brad was sitting up now, supported by two men, his face already swelling, his eyes barely focusing. He looked at Marcus with something that might have been recognition, or fear, or the first moment of understanding that he'd fundamentally miscalculated. "You're fired," Brad slurred through his swelling jaw. "No," a new voice said from the entrance. "He's not." Richard Holloway stood in the doorway, his silver hair perfectly styled, his expression unreadable. The gym owner had arrived for one of his rare morning visits and walked into a scene that could destroy his business if handled wrong. Everyone turned to face him. Richard looked at Brad, slumped and broken, then at Marcus, standing tall with a mop in his hand, then at the 15 fighters, their phones still recording, still broadcasting to the internet in real time. In that moment, Richard Holloway made a calculation that had nothing to do with justice and everything to do with liability, public relations, and survival. "Brad," Richard said carefully, "I think you need to go to the hospital, and then we need to have a very serious conversation about your employment here." Brad's face crumbled. "What? He defended himself against an assault you initiated after threatening his employment and forcing him into a combat situation against his will. There are at least 15 witnesses and multiple recordings. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to the hospital. Then you're going to quietly resign. And we're all going to hope that Marcus here doesn't decide to sue us into oblivion for creating a hostile work environment." The room went silent again. Richard turned to Marcus. "I apologize. This should never have happened. Take the rest of the day off, paid. We'll discuss next steps Monday." Marcus nodded slowly. He looked around the room one last time, at the faces that had laughed, that had recorded, that had participated through their silence. "I'll be here Monday," he said, 5:47 a.m., like I always do. Then Marcus Webb, janitor and former champion, walked out of Iron Forge Academy with his mop over his shoulder and his dignity, finally, powerfully, intact. Behind him, Brad Killian was being helped to his feet, his career finished by the man he'd tried to humiliate. And somewhere in that gym, every single phone was uploading the video that would go viral within hours, sparking conversations about racism, power, workplace harassment, and the dangerous assumption that silence equals weakness. The cage door swung shut with a metallic clang that sounded exactly like justice. The video hit 3 million views in the first 18 hours. By Monday morning, Marcus Webb was a viral sensation. Janitor knockout trended on Twitter, TikTok exploded with reaction videos, and news outlets from CNN to local Arizona stations were calling Iron Forge Academy demanding interviews. Marcus declined them all. He showed up Monday at 5:47 a.m. like he'd promised. His hand was wrapped in a light bandage. The doctor, Sharon insisted he see, had confirmed 2 bruised knuckles, but no serious damage. 30 years since his last real punch, and his body still remembered the mechanics perfectly. Richard Holloway was waiting for him in the office. "Marcus," Richard began, and his tone was different now, respectful, careful, the voice of a man walking a tightrope. "I want to formally apologize again. What Brad did was inexcusable. He's been terminated effective immediately. I've also instructed our legal team to review our workplace harassment policies, and am I fired?" Marcus interrupted. "What? No, God no, I'm trying to—" "Then I'd like to get to work," Marcus said simply. "Locker rooms don't clean themselves." Richard studied him for a long moment. "The media wants to talk to you. Some of them are offering money. Good money. I'm not interested in being famous for defending myself. I'm interested in paying my mortgage and my wife's medical bills. That's still my job?" "Yes, of course. But Marcus," Richard leaned forward, "you could leverage this. There are opportunities in Pugal here. Endorsements, maybe, speaking engagements. People want to hear your story." Marcus thought about that. About becoming a symbol, a narrative, a viral moment consumed and discarded by people who'd never spent a day in his shoes. "My story," he said slowly, "is that I'm a 58-year-old black man who worked hard his whole life, made sacrifices, and still ended up cleaning gyms for $13.50 an hour. The only reason anyone cares is because I knocked out a white man who had it coming. That's not a story I want to sell." The words hit Richard like a physical force. "But," Marcus continued, "if you want to do something useful with all this attention, you could review the pay for everyone who works here. Not just me, everyone. Because I guarantee you I'm not the only person in this building struggling." Richard nodded slowly, a flicker of what might have been shame crossing his face. I'll look into that." Marcus stood. "Then I'll get to work." Over the next weeks, something shifted at Iron Forge Academy. New trainers were hired, more diverse, more professional, carefully vetted. A formal harassment reporting system was implemented. Wages were reviewed, and several employees, including Marcus, received raises. None of it would have happened without the video, without 15 phones capturing what happened when a system designed to protect humiliation finally broke. But Marcus knew the truth. He was one of the lucky ones. For every viral video that forces change, there are thousands of moments exactly like his that happen in silence. Black men and women forced to swallow their dignity to keep their jobs, pushed to the edge by people who know the system protects them, humiliated by individuals who face no consequences because there's no camera, no witnesses willing to speak up, no tidy narrative for the internet to rally behind. Marcus Webb got justice because he had the skill to defend himself and because 15 people happened to be recording. But what about everyone else? What about every minimum wage worker enduring daily microaggressions from people who will never face consequences? What about every person of color navigating hostile environments where the punishment for speaking up exceeds the punishment for staying silent? 3 months after the incident, Marcus was still showing up at 5:47 a.m. His wife Sharon was responding well to a new treatment protocol. Covered now by the health insurance Iron Forge had finally extended to all full-time employees. His daughter had applied to a better school, her confidence restored by watching her father stand up when standing up mattered. The bruises on Brad Killian had healed. His career had not. The last Marcus heard, he was working retail in Phoenix, far from the cage where his assumptions about power had been so dramatically shattered. But here's what stays with you, what should haunt every comfortable person who watched that video and felt satisfying vengeance. Marcus Webb shouldn't have needed to be a former champion to be treated with dignity. He shouldn't have needed to knock someone unconscious to be respected. He shouldn't have needed to go viral to receive fair wages and basic human decency. The system that forced him into that cage, the system built on unchecked power, racial hierarchies, and economic desperation, that system is still operating every day in gyms and offices and warehouses and kitchens across this country. Most people in Marcus's position don't have a punch that can change their circumstances. Most people just have silence, survival, and the grinding weight of knowing that speaking up might cost them everything. So here's the real question, the one that should keep you up at night. How many Marcus Webbs are cleaning your office right now, serving your coffee, stocking your shelves, enduring daily humiliation from people who look like Brad Killian, who feel entitled to someone else's dignity as entertainment? And what are you going to do about it when there's no camera recording? When there's no viral moment to make caring convenient? When there's just a person, struggling and invisible, hoping someone will see their humanity before the system grinds them down completely? The cage door is still open. The question is whether you have the courage to step inside and change what happens there, not after the video goes viral, but before anyone needs to throw a punch at all. Share this story, but more importantly, look around your own life. Who's invisible to you? Whose dignity are you complicit in eroding through your silence? Change doesn't happen because one janitor fought back. Change happens because enough people decide that no one should have to fight in the first place.